If we don't do this, there will be nothing left to save.
No Time to Die is finally here after being delayed roughly 6 different times. Who would have thought that when the first trailer came out on December 4th, 2019, that we would be waiting almost 2 years to see it? 2019 still feels like last year. That's still taking some getting used to in my brain. Wow. I'm not massively into Bond. I like it, but I don't love it. I'm a terrible British person, I guess. But I do have a real soft spot for the Daniel Craig era. It's the era that I grew up with. I call it like the tail end of Brosnan, but it was really like Casino Royale in 2006 that really made me go, wow, like this is really awesome. And then, yeah, I followed them ever since. I always watch them when they come out. And I just love that, like, everyone I know of all ages wants to see it. Like, my mum always loves seeing the latest James Bond. She loves Daniel Craig. Like, she's said to me, we have to go and see it next week. It's like tricking your mum into going to see an action movie. Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you, James, for everything you do for mums and sons seeing films together everywhere. I've not seen every single James Bond film, but I have seen every single Daniel Craig film, so I feel like he's kind of my Bond. Because of that, I was very, very excited to know that he came back one more time after the incredibly disappointing Spectre. Will No Time to Die kind of right those wrongs and see him ending on a high note?
History isn't kind to men who play God.
So basically, I thought it'd be fun to go through the Daniel Craig era and rank every movie. I don't think it's going to be too surprising a list, but I do have No Time to Die thrown in there, and I'm going to be comparing that to kind of the best of the Craig era, and I'm also going to be diving into the worst of the Craig era. I wish I'd done my recording yesterday because now I have a cold and I feel awful, so I hope this doesn't come across too nasally and that my nose isn't too red and I don't just want to have a nap in the middle of the video. James Bond is one of those comforting franchises because it is never ending. Every single story sees him save the world in the nick of time as this cool, classy gentleman spy. It's a fantasy. It's that familiarity and legacy, in fact, that you can go and see it with your parents that has made it last for so long in the first place. And it's also because of that kind of elastic continuity, the fact that he can change his face and go through different eras.
Because I think you're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a relic of the Cold War.
I understand double O's have a very short life expectancy, so your mistake will be short-lived.
But sometimes I think these conventions of what a Bond movie should be is kind of the noose around its neck. The fact that each Bond movie is usually standalone and isn't overly connected usually works in its favour, and as we've seen with things like Spectre, trying to tie everything together and make it all connected doesn't equal quality. The Daniel Craig era is really an era of like kind of two opposing halves. It simultaneously tries to subvert the Bond tropes we know and tell fresh stories, but it also likes to play into the conventions and the tropes, in both the good movies and the bad movies. Let's get the worst Daniel Craig Bond movie just out of the way. Spectre.
I'm feeling something that makes me want.
Before I came to this video, this was the first James Bond's Daniel Craig that I'd only seen once. I saw it in the cinema in 2015. It bored the pants off me then, and it was no different this time, unfortunately. It is just a dull affair from start to finish. It has the pacing of a snail, and yet there is nothing interesting about the plot whatsoever.
You came across me so many times, and yet you never saw me.
Everything about the plot is just, ooh, this is tying in with the previous movie. It turns out this person was also tied into this organisation.
Le Chiffre, green, silver.
All dead.
A nice pattern developed. You interfered in my world, I destroyed yours.
And so on and so forth. And then the crescendo to all of this is the I am Khan moment, which is Christoph Waltz saying he's Blofeld.
Till a year ago, he didn't exist.
John Harrison was a fiction.
Hans Oberhauser died 20 years ago, James.
My name
is Ernst Stafford Blofeld.
A character that fans and people familiar with the old movies will know. Yay! He's like his long-lost evil brother. Just saying that out loud just makes me think that What this movie really needed was an Austin Powers companion movie to come out the same year. I can't believe they ended up copying the backstory for Austin and Dr. Evil from Goldmember. It's basically the same thing, and Dr. Evil is the parody of Blofeld. The parody actually beat them to the punch by 12 years. I guess it's all come full circle, hasn't it? Somewhere out there, Pierce Brosnan's Bond is laughing, saying, "Look how it feels!" You know, Pierce Brosnan, after GoldenEye, had an Austin Powers movie come out. Every single year he had a Bond movie out. No wonder it completely killed his era and we had to end up with Casino Royale. Poor bastard. How could you compete with Mr. Powers? I don't think there's a single set piece, or indeed a single action beat, in this whole movie that really thrills. And it's really strange because Sam Mendes directed Skyfall, and a lot of those scenes have real energy to them, and there's some really fun, like, memorable set pieces, like, you know, like Bond, like using the crane to pull apart the train and then jump on the train. The whole tube chase is fantastic. I love it when Silver just slides across the floor. And then Bond sort of like does this weird thing where his legs sort of like eject down from his torso as he slides off the escalators. Fantastic. Magnificent. Magnificent. Spectre, like, it's just so dull. There's no tension in any of the action scenes. The worst part is when Bond literally just walks out of the Spectre base and he's just like picking people off. He's just walking around. He's not doing anything. It's so bad. It's like a parody level bad. From the very first action scene, you know it's going to be a stinker because they can't resist doing the one take. This is when a one take is bad. This is how not to do a one take. Because there's nothing interesting about the fact that we're seeing Bond move through this Day of the Dead festival in an unbroken shot. There's nothing is gained from it. All he does is walk inside, go up the elevator, he checks in, he changes, and then he walks along the rooftop. That's it. It's not smart because it's slow. Casino Royale is fast-paced and would never do this and would never need to because there's so much interesting shit and problems being added from every single angle in Bond's adventure. Whereas this is just him walking. He's just walking along, and we know he's about to do some secret agent shit, so him going upstairs and climbing out the window and taking this long to get to his target is not exciting and it's not intriguing. It's like, yeah, we know you're going to end up somewhere like that and probably end up hanging out of a helicopter in 15 minutes. Come on, show us. You compare that to Cary Fukunaga's True Detective one take.
Don't fucking fire. Do not fire.
Every single moment of that has got you going, how did they do that? There's an exciting problem added in every single beat of that sequence. Matthew McConaughey's Russ Cole is put through the ringer and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And it's an awesome one take. That's how you do a one take. This is not how you do a one take. What was the point? There should be a reason for a one take playing out in real time for it to be effective. The audience needs to feel like they're getting the best viewpoint possible that we need to see every single second transpire. If you can just cut to the chase literally in the editing room, then there's no point. It's no surprise that Fukunaga has a one-take action sequence in his Bond movie. Towards the end of No Time to Die, 007 has to ascend a stairwell. It's an effective sequence and works for all the same reasons as the True Detective scene. I wish I could show you some footage, but I obviously don't have it. Rest assured, the camera work makes it feel cramped and claustrophobic, and there's a particularly standout moment involving a grenade blast point blank at Bond. And just to quickly cover the action of No Time to Die, overall it is a marked improvement on Spectre. Craig doesn't run in these movies much anymore. Instead, the car chases and shootouts thrill in other ways. There's a welcome return to more gadgets, and his younger co-stars do more of the energetic hand-to-hand combat. The opening set piece on the bridge and the moody shootout in the woods are my favourite scenes, as well as the aforementioned one take. Also, could this be some of the best non-formal wear Bond swag? Quite possibly. Look at those braces. The man looks ready for a 1v1 rust and he's going to fuck you up. Costume designer Soderat and Lalab said they wanted this final look to be iconic and unlike anything we've seen Bond wear before. And for his send-off, I think they got it exactly right. This look kills. Anyway, time to stop talking about No Time to Die excitedly and go back to Spectre. But first, a message from our sponsor. Today's sponsor is Displays. And they make some very cool metal posters. They sent me some, and I'm gonna unbox them and show them to you. I think you'll like some of the designs. Went with a few Star Wars Marvel-y things. What's this one? Okay, so this is the Hulk. Hulk-like metal poster. Pretty sweet. Display is a one-of-a-kind metal poster that you can hang up on the wall without any screws or nuts or bolts or drilling, which is a plus, especially if you're renting. Got a TARDIS. Lovely. 11 screwdriver, some RTD Daleks, yeah, lovely, and some Gallifreyan. We'll try and take it out of the... God damn it. Oh, what do we have here? Oh. This one might be my favourite. This is really nice. Oh, the Infinity War days. How am I nostalgic for a time that was only 3 years ago. Display are committed to metal over wood, and they are planting a tree for every poster they sell. And so far, they have planted over 14 million trees. It's actually a pretty good cause, and if you get some awesome metal posters to boot, it's a win-win for everyone involved. Take it back, I think these might be my favourites. Look at this Empire. That's really nice. It only takes 20 seconds to set them up with no power tools, no damage to your walls, and ultimately no frustrations. Display! Right now, Display is offering my subscribers a mahoosive deal. If you click on my link in the description, you'll get 26% off the purchase of 1 to 2 Displays and 36% off the purchase of 3 or more Displays. The offer is automatically calculated at checkout. And now, finally, back to Spectre. Sam Smith's The Writings on the Wall is I don't know, I'm not really a fan. It lacks energy, much like the movie itself, and I never have any inclination to listen to it. As I've been editing this video, I've been blasting pretty much all the other Bond songs, but this, nah. Spectre's title sequence is quite pretty at least. I dig the gold fiery hues and the octopus shit. It uses silhouettes really well, and there's some really nice imagery. Wish the song that went along with it was cooler, but hey ho. The plot involves something about a merger between MI5 and MI6. I mean, who cares? Not even Ralph Fiennes and Daniel Craig care when they talk about it at the start.
As you know, we're in the middle of the biggest shake-up in the history of British intelligence. Ink's barely dry on this merger with MI5.
And there's this new villain, there's this new member of MI5 called C, played by Andrew Scott, who is obviously going to be a villain from the first moment he walks into frame, because all he talks about is surveillance, 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 and how surveillance is the future.
This merger's going to be a whole new chapter for us. We're going to bring British intelligence out of the dark ages into the light.
He's obviously a villain, and his first port of call is to try and retire the prehistoric 00 program. Yeah, the only... Andrew Scott is completely wasted, as is Ralph Fiennes, really, but the only thing it does lead to...
And now we know what C stands for.
...is a fantastic one-liner from M.
Careless.
I was also really hyped that we were going to get Dave Bautista as a henchman. It seems like your dinner plans will be up in the air. And he's completely wasted. He gets like a lame car chase, and then it's an okay fight on the train. It's pretty incoherent, and he gets taken out pretty quickly, and that's it.
Shoot.
A real shame. Like, he could have been a fantastic Bond henchman. That should have been like the best hand-to-hand Bond fight ever. No, you got Dave Bautista. You got Dave Bautista and you wasted him. It's a crime. trying to connect all the previous movies to this one is just laughable. Part of the strength of Skyfall is that off the back of the murky Quantum of Solace, which was a direct sequel to Casino Royale, Skyfall just got to be its own thing, whereas this one just backpedaled on that completely, and even tries to tie in Skyfall in a way that it obviously was never meant to before. Like, now Silver was an agent of Spectre, so he's all part of the same web that Blofeld has created, including Lashif and Green from Quantum of Solace. Like, it's all connected. Ooh, it's just so unnecessary. Who would have thought Mr. White would end up being in these movies so damn much?
You're a kite.
He's a what?
You're a kite dancing in a hurricane, Mr. Bond.
Oh. I guess in the long run it was worth it to get the Madeline Swan storyline in No Time to Die, but for the duration of Spectre, Madeline Swan has nothing to do, and there is no chemistry between her and Daniel Craig, and that is in part because Daniel Craig sleepwalks throughout the entire movie.
You're right, sir. You have got a tricky day ahead.
And he knows he's doing it too. He gives no fucks about this movie or about playing Bond in this movie. He doesn't utter any line beyond a couple of decibels. It's actually impressive.
That all sounds lovely.
To see someone not give a shit about such an expensive movie. Obviously, it's kind of hard to convey how phoned in this one is just from a few clips of him softly speaking, but in my opinion, the intensity and charm of the stronger Craig performances are nowhere to be found in Spectre. This was the film where he said he would rather slit his wrists than do another one, and whether or not he really meant it, the dreary turn as Bond in Spectre doesn't help the case. But you know, like, it's not surprising after he'd gone through Quantum of Solace and then this, for him to just be like fed up with the quality of the writing. There's a moment where Christoph Waltz says he's the author of all of James's pain.
Me. It was all me, James.
I'm gonna get you, Austin Powers.
It would have been better if Christoph Waltz just played an original villain, like what they're doing with Rami Malek. It's insane that Star Trek Into Darkness proved how bad all this canon lip service can be and this I am Khan stuff. Only for Spectre to repeat the same mistake 2 years later. Only for Rise of Skywalker to repeat the same mistake 4 years later. And it's insane that this trilogy of canon worshipping, 66% of it is directed by J.J. Abrams. JJ, come on, man. Come on. Where's the MI3 Star Trek days? Where's the Alias days? Where's the... What's the one with the... What's the one? Super 8. Oh, Super 8. That was good. That was good. What happened, man? What happened? We need to talk. We need to talk. The absolute lack of Craig fucks really comes to a head when he escapes the Spectre base. Whoa. I am on the edge of my seat right now. How is Bond going to get out of this one? Oh god, I've never seen a secret agent move so fast! Somebody help us! Look at this, it's just beyond parody. He's just walking around, he just doesn't care. The torture scene is a moment that really sticks out to me because it reminds me of the torture scene in Casino Royale and how much better that is.
No matter what you do, I'm not going to give you the password, which means your clients are going to hunt you down and cut you into little pieces of meat while you're still breathing.
In Casino Royale, the audience can really feel the pain that Bond is going through. We're aware of exactly what is happening to him. And even if we don't own a pair of testicles ourselves, we can empathise with the idea that he is being castrated. It is a horrible scene, and you want him to get out of the room as fast as possible. Lashif is a fantastic and effective villain.
I'll feed you what you seem not to value.
In Spectre, instead of that great torture scene, we get Blofeld just chatting a load of shit.
If the needle finds the correct spot in the fusiform gyrus, you recognize no one.
Daniel Craig's just sat there, bolted to this chair, this medical chair, and these tiny drills are sort of like coming down and just drilling these tiny holes into different parts of his brain that are going to make him forget things and lose his motor functions. I don't know, it's convoluted sci-fi nonsense. don't feel how close he is to death at any one moment. Blofeld says one of these drills makes him permanently forget Madeleine Swan, and then he doesn't forget her, I guess, with the power of love.
He dies not knowing who you are.
A few inches later.
Do those blue eyes still recognize you?
So, like, there's no basis on how these drills are going to work and how they're going to kill you. And then Bond really easily escapes by Blofeld letting him have a conversation with Madeleine Swan face to face, giving her an explosive watch, and then her throwing the explosive watch at Blofeld. It's terrible. The guards even get up to stop Swan doing this, and Blofeld halts them. I bet you feel really good about that decision now, you fucking idiot. At the end of the terrible base sequence, there is the biggest explosion in cinema history, practical explosion, and for what? Swan and Bond just stare at it, completely disinterested, and, you know, like, they're just looking at it for the sake of us seeing the effect. Compare that to, like, the practical explosion of the hospital in The Dark Knight, you know, a moment that is the release to a whole tense sequence of people trying to evacuate from the hospitals. Fantastic. It just encapsulates the entire lazy experience that is Spectre. But wait, recently in the Being James Bond documentary, Craig spoke about the agonising Spectre shoot in which he continued to work through a broken leg. And suddenly now it all makes sense, doesn't it? The muted performance, the timid action scenes, Craig saying he wanted to slit his wrists after they were done shooting, the man was in incredible pain. It's a wonder he did any of the action or delivered any of those lines. But I have to say, why did they work through that? The results were always going to be less than ideal, someone should have pushed to shut down production, and unfortunately let Craig heal. Judging from the documentary, it appeared Craig wanted to shoot through it and have surgery after the fact, which sounds like an excruciating decision. Surely it would have been better for Craig, the production, and ultimately the quality of the movie if they had simply waited until everyone was ready again. God forbid a Bond film gets delayed. Now, Quantum of Solace is nowhere near as bad as Spectre. Shit! But it still deserves a bad rap because it's not very good, and especially coming off the back of Casino Royale, it just makes the pitfalls all the more apparent. Director Marc Forster and Daniel Craig reportedly came up with lines themselves because they were left with half a screenplay due to the writer's strike of America. God, I remember that. So many things got affected by that. But with good reason. God, that was ages ago. Ooh, but it really shows the story is nowhere near as tightly wound or well constructed as Casino Royale, and it just kind of plods from beat to beat.
The first thing you should know about us is that we have people everywhere. Am I right?
Worse still, you cannot understand or connect with Quantum of Solace without watching Casino Royale. Like, Casino Royale is a perfect thing by itself.
I was sorry to hear about Vesper. I think she loved you.
But Quantum of Solace is like the James Bond DLC that you didn't need. It attempts to answer questions of, like, you know, what was the organisation from the first movie that Le Chiffre was involved in, and it turns out it's Quantum, and, you know, they have people everywhere, except that doesn't really come to much. There's a cool plot involving the villain trying to control Bolivia's water supply, which becomes more timely as time goes on, and will only get more timely as water problems begin to affect us in the next 20 years. But Green is an ineffective villain.
So, if you decide not to sign, you will wake up with your balls in your mouth and your willing replacement standing over you.
Olga Kurylenko is maybe one of the worst Bond girls ever. She has so little to do. Her tangential storyline, like, is just so boring. By the time her and Bond actually share the screen together and her motives are revealed, it turns out to be a pretty bog standard, you killed my father, prepare to die storyline, and it all culminates with Bond having a fist fight with this nerd Green. Who actually manages to hold his own against Bond for some reason, and Olga Kurylenko fights the general that killed her father. For For a franchise like Bond, which has come under flack for many years because of its erratic and inconsistent treatment of female characters, to put it lightly, having a Bond girl storyline be tied to the threat of rape is something that needs to be handled with nuance and dimensionality. Instead, it's half-hearted and says nothing about the themes it mentions. In the finale, Camille saves a woman from an implied rape attempt by the same general who raped her mother and sister. I guess this should be a really big deal for her character, and is arguably a more important act than killing him. She spares another woman from the pain this man has previously inflicted, the entire reason that she's here and in the story. The movie doesn't shine a light on this moment at all. Instead, the focus is placed on the fist fighting, this woman is ushered out as quickly as possible, Camille has almost no reaction, and then she has a fight where she gets to kill the general. Arc complete, I guess. Maybe the movie is trying to go for something more nuanced by having this here, but any argument that this is well conveyed probably goes out the window when the victim's underwear is shown rather than her face. Just completely nonsensical framing. Gemma Arterton was the other Bond girl who was featured prominently in the trailers and marketing. Her role in the movie amounts to being the classic party pooper stereotype.
That's not important. My orders are to turn you around and put you on the first plane back to London.
Who sleeps with Bond immediately and then gets fridged. She does absolutely nothing, and her death is just an excuse to pull a reference on us. This is not the first Daniel Craig Bond girl to get unceremoniously killed off, but at least Casino Royale's Solange got to feel like a human being for the scenes that she was featured in, and the movie actually handles the violence with far more examination. After Craig's first outing featured the most well-drawn romance of the series, this kind of weakly written Bond woman just pales in comparison. Not to mention James and Vesper's romance is actually fraught with sexual tension, whereas this isn't steamy at all.
I can't find the stationery. You come and help me look.
The choppiness of the action scenes in Quantum of Solace have been well documented on the internet already, so I'm not going to harp on it too much, but yeah, it's pretty bad. If the action scenes were good, maybe this movie would be pretty watchable, but you know, like even with the lackluster story, the action is just incomprehensible. The opening car chase is terrible. I'd say the best action beat is probably when Bond is like tied to this rope by his feet and he's hanging upside down. He's trying to grab his gun whilst the quantum agent at the top of the scaffolding is trying to get his gun. Great moment of tension, and there's like a really iconic shot where Bond spins round and kills the guy. But other than that, there's not really much exciting action at all. The boat sequence has nothing on. The world is not enough. At least this one is mercifully short, which is why it ranks above Spectre. And yeah, I guess out of the two of them, this one's just slightly more watchable.
I don't care what universe you're from. That's gotta hurt.
Quantum of Solace features Jack White and Alicia Keys' Another Way to Die, which, unlike the movie, is fantastic. An underrated Bond theme. It would rank more highly for me if there simply weren't more Craig-era songs I prefer. So now we're entering the top 3, at which point it should be no surprise that the number 3 spot and the number 2 spot are going to be between Skyfall and No Time to Die.
Count to 10.
Before I compare them, let's just quickly talk about Skyfall. If Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace mark a distinct era of Bond that was more gritty and geared towards that kind of Bourne popularity, then Skyfall and Spectre mark kind of the second era of the second sub-era of the Daniel Craig era. Does that make sense? Yeah? Sub-era. Little mini sections, a little footnote. Yeah, which goes towards more goofy fare and plays into more of the tropes and conventions of the Bond franchise. For better, Skyfall. And for worse with Spectre. I like Skyfall a lot. I really liked it when it came out at the time. It was a really fun experience. All my mates wanted to see it. Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. As years have passed, I've not really gone back to it, and when I rewatched it for this video, I found myself like, enjoying it, but it didn't blow me away, and I don't think it has like a massive amount of rewatchability.
What makes you think this is my first time?
But at the time, it was definitely a breath of fresh air, and I think people enjoyed it so much at the time because it gave them the Bond movie that they really wanted.
Q. 007.
Well, my name's Eve. Eve Moneypenny.
At least here there are no old ladies giving orders and no little gadgets.
Good luck with that.
Relatively low stakes, and it presents Bond as once again this like infinite, everlasting figure that has these one-off adventures that don't like ultimately mean very much for his ongoing crusade, and it's just about action and car chases and whoa, back up. Is that New Cross? Is that Venue? Wow. Venue exists in the James Bond universe. Incredible. The Dark Knight influences are so obvious. I especially love the trope of the villain who is a sociopathic oddball getting captured in the second act so that they can have an intense conversation with the protagonists before revealing that they've escaped. And not only have they escaped, but they planned to be caught. This was all part of the plan. It was great when The Dark Knight did it, but after Loki had done it, and this had done it, and Khan had done it, it was really well worn at the time. Also, Silver does all these weird pop-up things to M's computer, and again, it's clearly trying to riff on the whimsy of the Joker, but it ends up looking like Jim Carrey circa 1995.
Tear one off and scratch my head. Once was red is black instead.
Still, all the set pieces are really fun and memorable. Love the bike chase at the start. Love the tube chase. And the assault on Skyfall at the end with the Home Alone traps is very fun. Unlike the last two entries we've spoken about, which have openings that set up nothing in the way of any narrative thrust, the last movie I spoke about, Quantum of Solace, literally starts with Bond shoving his future daughter's granddad into the boot of his car.
It's time to get out.
That's literally it. That's literally all he does. And he blows up some cars. Whereas this one is about challenging the idea of Bond being this unkillable mythic figure by killing him, or pretending to kill him. Everyone thinks that Bond is truly dead apart from the audience, and that is not a problem with the movie. That is the point of the movie. That is A-okay with me, because in the 50th year of James Bond, Skyfall is there to sort of wrap a warm blanket around you and remind you of all the fun tropes and conventions and try and bank on the best of what Bond can be, and entertain you whilst doing so. And I think for that, it really succeeds in its mission objective. To celebrate the 50th anniversary, Bond needs to be unkillable. It is a celebration of the character, and after the downer twosome that was Royale and Solace, goofy Skyfall antics with that familiar twang works.
He's keen to get home.
There is no romantic subplot in the movie with a Bond girl. In fact, beyond a flirtationship with Moneypenny, the Bond girls are treated with disposable disdain, much like in Quantum of Solace. Judi Dench's M is instead the linchpin of the movie, and the only real lasting change harboured by this instalment. The conflict between her and Bond is solid. She put MI6 above her best agent, and he is suffering the consequences. When he comes back, their trust is shattered, and both are finding themselves off their game. Add Silver into the mix, an old agent of M's who is sold out and left for dead much like Bond, and you have all the makings of an engaging, if not overly original, hero-villain dynamic. It takes the initial idea in Die Another Day, a broken Bond who finally got caught returning to the fray, and actually does something with it. I especially like how this felt like the biggest Craig Bond movie at the time, but ends with just 4 principal characters for a stripped down and emotional finale. M is often referred to as Bond's mother figure in these movies, and I don't know how much I really buy into that, but I do enjoy where it takes Bond emotionally. Seeing Bond cry over M recalls Her Majesty's Secret Service, leaving Bond with one less loved one in his life, a permanent lasting bit of damage that we can use to propel him in future adventures. And of course we have lined up Ralph Fiennes' Mallory to become the new M, just reinforcing the overarching idea of the movie, which is that all of the conventions and tropes you know and love are solidified here and they will be there in the future.
Are you ready to get back to work?
With pleasure.
Skyfall's theme, Skyfall, reinforces the comfy familiarity of the movie. It's exactly what you'd expect from a Bond song, big, epic, and Adele is the perfect choice. It doesn't really surprise, but much like the movie, this is right for the 50th. The title sequence following directly on from Bond's watery grave is also good. I love the allusions to Skyfall House, and it is a breeze to sit through. Skyfall is good, but it's also quite disposable, and I think for that reason, I'm going to have to rank it just slightly below No Time to Die. This is your final warning for No Time to Die spoilers, because I'm going to spoil the shit out of it, and it is the kind of spoiler that you really don't want to know about if you have any intention of seeing the movie. It was strange to everyone that Daniel Craig was going to do another one, and we were all like, why? And now we all know why. It's likely the only reason Daniel Craig signed on to this movie was so that he could kill James Bond. And getting to kill James Bond is kind of a cinematic honour because it has never happened before. This is the first time in this series of movies that Bond has not been the unkillable myth. It does the one thing no other Bond movie has ever dared to do, not even Casino Royale. And I think it will be up there with films like On Her Majesty's Secret Service as being the Bond film where that specific unique thing happened that everyone knows it for. That was the Bond film where he got married. That was the Bond film where it was his first mission and he fell in love with Vesper and it became a tragedy. And this is the Bond film where James Bond finally bit the dust. And it is bold to kill him off, and it is treated like something that's really unsatisfying. He almost gets off the island at the last minute. The bomb doors close, you know, and you're watching it going like, oh Bond, just watch out. It's kind of crazy to think of all the different things that James Bond has survived, and it was just that one scratch to the face from Rami Malek that screwed him. I really honestly didn't think they would ever kill James Bond. I had honestly no inclination in the lead up to this movie. In spite of all the times it's been delayed, it never dawned on me that they would kill off James Bond. It's not a character like Tony Stark Iron Man where they'll just reboot it again and it doesn't really matter if he dies. Like, the James Bond continuity is never really definitively said one way or the other if it's always supposed to be the same James Bond or a different James Bond. And also, there's a lot more mainstream appeal for James Bond, so I didn't think they would ever kill him off because it kind of automatically makes it a bit confusing when the next one comes in. Like, for example, like they kept Judi Dench from Brosnan to Craig, and even though the Craig era is kind of a reboot, that makes perfect sense and people bought that. Whereas I think now, with Craig dead, it would be weird to keep M and Ben Whishaw's Q and Natasha Lynch and all of those characters with a new Bond. If he survived, I think it'd be much easier for you to recast and just not mention it at all, that he's changed his face, but we can't really do that anymore. When I saw this with my mum and the film was over, the first thing she said, her initial reaction, was, how are they going to do another one if he's dead? And it's a sentiment I've heard more than once in discussion with the movie. Moviegoers really do see James Bond as one man, even when the continuity reboots. And so when something as significant as this happens to Craig, it in essence happens to them all. James Bond, the singular character, is no longer unkillable, not just the Daniel Craig iteration. This will always be the time he died, and that makes it special, and it informs not only every past Bond film, but every future one too. It's special because it managed to surprise me, it managed to put me on the quote-unquote edge of my seat. Blockbuster movies need to do things they haven't tried before. They need to shock as long as it isn't in lieu of a cheap trick, but a daring story proposition. In which case, I think Cary Fukunaga, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and the team that helped bring this movie together succeeded. And not that it makes it good by proxy, but it is nice to see No Time to Die reference George Lazenby's only adventure with Craig's last.
You have all the time in the world.
Yes, I like Billie Eilish's latest, No Time to Die fits the movie, and her voice is perfect for a Bond theme. Not an awful lot to say on this one. What I really want to talk about is the bland-ass title sequence. I didn't like it at all. Some of the other title sequences are too busy, but this one feels really empty, and I didn't care for the stone statues. Rami Malek's Safin is in the movie a surprisingly little amount. Safin is used sparingly, but he is used fairly well. Every scene he's in is pretty good. The opening sequence where he tries to kill Madeline and successfully kills her mother is fantastic, and it trades on, like, you know, a few kind of like horror stings, which is really nice. The bio-terrorist weapon MacGuffin takes a little while to get used to in the movie. The first time it's unleashed on the unwitting members of Spectre and their faces all bubble up, it's kind of weird to watch, particularly when you've just marathoned everything and you started with Casino Royale. It's hard to imagine this Bond being the same Bond in a way, but there we go. I think you just have to kind of accept that the Craig era Bond movies got sillier and sillier, more in line with their previous counterparts. It does distract from me when I'm watching Casino Royale, knowing he's got this long-lost evil brother who killed their father, well, his surrogate father.
Me.
But you just have to try not to think about it. So, to be honest, in terms of continuity and tonal inconsistency, it doesn't really matter a whole lot. The fact that there's this weird bio-terror weapon in this one, and, like, you know, over-the-top magnet gadgets and an evil villain in his island lair doesn't bother me too much, even though Casino Royale was so grounded.
Well, it's all a matter of perspective.
Safin's plan is weirdly Thanos-y. It's established that his nanobots can target mass groups of individuals, and Bond notes that the fallout of this will be cataclysmic on a world scale. But why? Safin has a speech about free will, which is similar in a roundabout way to this monologue.
I want someone to tell me what to believe in. I want someone to tell me what to eat, what to like, what to hate, what to rage about.
He thinks that people want the comfort of being shown the way, and that he's the kind of individual with the vision to lead the world to a better place. How killing millions of people is going to do that, it's not clear. His infatuation with Madeline, his fixation on saving and taking life, that all checks out and brings great depth to the character. But who is he planning to unleash his nanobots on? Why those people in those countries specifically? There is no clear ideology behind who he is going to target, and I feel like this is to avoid any unwanted comparisons to Marvel's Big Purple Space Knob. Also seems strange that we have our first Black 00 and there's a MacGuffin that can wipe out whole ethnicities. This is stated when she's in the room, and yet we never get her perspective on it. Hell, the scene doesn't even cut to a shot of her when this is said. The closest we get is a time to die one-liner. I'm not saying the whole movie needs to be about race, but it seems odd that the movie puts things like this out there and then doesn't care to elaborate. Blofeld only shows up once in person, but what transpires is far more interesting than anything to do with his plan in Spectre. It turns out that it was him who planted the bomb at Vesper's grave, knowing that James would one day return to it. Madeline Swan never betrayed him, and she had nothing to do with it. She only suggested Bond visit the grave because she truly loved him and wanted him to find peace. To make another endgame comparison, Tony gets to live out a happy ending for 5 years with his love and their daughter. When he dies, it's sad, but hey, at least he got to have that time. By comparison, James spends the 5-year gap completely alone, thinking Swan screwed him over. He doesn't meet his daughter until his fate is sealed. He never gets a proper relationship with her, unlike Stark. So when he dies, it is hopelessly bittersweet. All of this is his nemesis Blofeld's fault. Blofeld fucks up Bond's perfect retirement plan. He literally wastes years of his life that he could have spent with his daughter by tricking him. That is a blow that costs Bond love and time. He effectively hurts him from his prison cell without it being contrived. Blofeld doesn't do anything as hurtful in Spectre, and so I really like the way he and his criminal organisation are used in the movie. I like the rivalry between him and Safin, also the Blofeld voiceover telling the agents, reassuring them that the nanobots won't hurt them as we watch them scream to their deaths, is really quite wonderful. I didn't care at all for Madeline Swan in Spectre because she was so poorly written, but in this, I bought the relationship with James Bond. Lea Seydoux gets a meaty storyline and is of course revealed to be the mother of James's child, Mathilde. They're not quite family, yet dynamic is sweet, and it is nice to see Bond have something to fight for beyond saving the world. It certainly makes those endgame level stakes at the end that much more palatable. The other Bond women don't fare quite as well in the movie, because they're given much less to do. It is a pattern in these movies that they advertise a Bond girl in all the marketing pushes, but when it comes to the finished product, they sometimes only have more than an extended cameo. Anna de Armas' character Paloma is fun and very likeable, and the pair mimic a fraction of their Knives Out chemistry to get the action scenes going. But then they shake hands at the end of the action scene and Bond never sees her again. Could she not at least showed up to lend a hand at the island set finale? Natasha Lynch's Naomi comes along, so I'm sure the script could have worked in a way for Paloma to be there too. As it stands in the movie, de Armas shows up and quickly ducks out. It's a shame, and it makes the Bond women feel more like marketing tools to assure audiences of the classic Bond tropes, rather than characters that have an essential purpose in the story. No Time to Die ties up all the loose ends of the Craig era by examining character. It provides us with a new villain and organisation, and only uses Blofeld and Spectre to further James's personal story. Unlike Spectre, there is no incessant need to provide connections where it would bring no benefit to the emotions the movie is trying to conjure. Having Vesper and Blofeld and Spectre as pieces of the puzzle doesn't feel contrived, and it works to the movie's benefit. This is almost like what we should have gotten in 2015 instead. And now we arrive at the number one spot, which I'm sure you'll find is no surprise. Obviously, this video is always going to end with Casino Royale, because it's not only the best Daniel Craig Bond film, it is one of, if not the best Bond film ever. It's definitely my favourite out of the ones I've seen. I absolutely love it, and it was an absolute joy to rewatch it again for this video. 15 years on, and it is still absolutely fantastic, still holds up tremendously well, and it is still cooler than all of the other Daniel Craig Bond movies. It's got better action, it's got better stakes.
I'm sorry. That last hand nearly killed me.
And this is the best Daniel Craig Bond performance.
Yes!
Undeniably. Coming off the back of the lackluster Die Another Day, this stripped all the gadgets away, all of the conventions, and gave us something more in line with the Bourne movies, which were very popular at the time. Without it going, dare I say, too Bourne. I'm not really a massive fan of those movies. I'm certainly not a fan of the way they're shot. And I was never a fan of the fact that that style of action became popular. Thankfully, director Martin Campbell doesn't go too shaky like in Quantum of Solace, and a lot of the set pieces are still really well handled. He already had experience making GoldenEye, which is also Pierce Brosnan's first adventure. But obviously the action in that is more hyper-stylized. It's more in line with something like John Woo, the action in GoldenEye. It's just James Bond running around, spraying everything everywhere. It's just carnage. The action in Casino Royale is much more reserved. It's often just Bond chasing after one guy or fighting one or two guys. The best moments for me would obviously be the parkour chase and the stairwell fight. I love how this guy just pulls out a sword like it's fucking Lord of the Rings. For Frodo! And honestly, every single set piece or point of tension, like when Bond's poisoned or he's trying to stop a terrorist attack, it's all masterfully done. Seeing Bond completely screw up connecting the defibrillator, only realising his mistake when it's too late, it proves how close he is to death every single time, that just one little mistake could topple all the cards. He's not a super soldier, and he's certainly not invincible. With scenes like this, it dispels the idea that he could take on an army of armed guards effortlessly, because that would be hellishly boring. The finale in Venice isn't spoken about enough. It's got a really awesome practical effect wherein the entire building sinks, flooding the set with water. Craig said in an interview with GQ that it was one of the most magnificent sets he'd ever been on. Special effects supervisor Chris Corbold spoke about the immense work that went into pulling this off. I had built the odd room that had sunk before, but when production designer Peter Lamont showed me his design for a 4-story high house he wanted to sink, it was a bit of a shock. It wasn't something that we could do as a model because there's so much interaction with Bond and Vesper, combined with a shootout inside the building, so we had to build it. It was a colossal rig, it could move 15 degrees on either axis, and the whole thing could sink 20 feet into the water. We had massive air compressors underneath, which, when it started sinking, would pump huge volumes of air into the water to make it look like the water was being churned up. It was a real labour of love building it. Hats off to all my team, they put blood, sweat and tears into it. It really shows in the finished product because it is absolutely flawless. This whole sequence feels like the perfect distillation of what an Uncharted movie should be. Gunplay, climbing, a great use of the practical environment to build the tension. Let's pray we get something half as good as this. The first time I heard Chris Cornell's You Know My Name, I thought it was kind of corny, honestly. I thought it didn't sound like a Bond song, but over the years I've really warmed to it, and I do think it's a bit of a banger. In fact, it's a lot of a banger. The late Chris Cornell delivered Craig's best Bond song. It feels frantic, different to the Bond songs that came before, and does it as confidently as the film it accompanies. But the real ace in the hole, the thing this song has over all the others, is that it makes me think of Casino Royale. Casino Royale is just that awesome that this song would have come top even if it sounded like crap, to be honest. I know I'm a Casino Royale bitch, but I do not care. So finally, to rank all the Bond songs, first, You Know My Name, second, Skyfall, third, No Time to Die, fourth, Another Way to Die, and fifth, Writings on the Wall. Title sequences, Skyfall, Casino Royale, Spectre, Quantum of Solace, and bottom, No Time to Die, I guess. I don't just want to hear your rankings in the comments, I want to know what songs you preferred and what your favourite title sequences are. Eva Green's Vesper is the best Bond girl of all time.
Have a dinner jacket.
There are dinner jackets and dinner jackets. This is the latter.
How the... It's tailored.
I sized you up the moment we met.
The verbal sparring they have and the banter is just great. You completely buy that this is the woman that Bond would leave MI6 for.
I have no armor left. You stripped it from me.
So I've been talking about the opening sequences a lot across all of these movies as a way to sort of tell what sort of Bond movie we're going to get. And again, that's true of Casino Royale with perhaps the best Craig opening.
Your file shows no kills, and it takes 2.
Detailing how he gets his license to kill. We've got a set piece in the bathroom where he's fighting this guy, and then he's got a target to assassinate.
Wow. You needn't worry. The second is...
The line about his second kill is fantastic.
Yes. Considerably.
And of course we get the iconic Bond spin, but at the end of the scene. And the sheath is fantastic as well. Unlike someone like Blofeld, where all the mystique around him is just about connecting him to known Bond imagery, he's a character in his own right that has his own motivations and his own plot.
I'll get the money. Tell them I'll get the money.
You know, even if Bond wasn't in the movie, he would still be desperately trying to win this poker game because he needs to win back the money from his investors.
You think you can lose that kind of money and no one would notice?
Le Chiffre is not an all-powerful, maniacal, stereotypical Bond villain. He gets into bad situations and he has to crawl his way out like a cockroach.
Not a word of protest. Should find a new boyfriend.
He gets assassinated at the end whilst Bond is busy tied to a chair worrying about being castrated. He has nothing to do with that kill. This script doesn't let up for a second, the dialogue is tight, it is perfectly constructed from A to B. Seems like empty praise, but when you watch something like Spectre, the joys of Casino Royale become all the more apparent. And this is by far the most vulnerable Bond. It pivots the whole Bond myth away from being this like male power fantasy to being kind of a tragedy. The idea that to live as James Bond would be a bad thing because of the amount of death and destruction that would follow you and how it would eventually just tear apart your soul.
You can switch off so easily, can't you? It doesn't bother you killing those people.
I wouldn't be very good at my job if it did.
We get a James Bond that doesn't really want to be in this game for too long, and then when he finds it out with Vesper, he takes it. It's like an origin story where you desperately don't want the character to become the character we know and love.
The name's Bond.
It's almost like a punishment.
James Bond.
And even though this is the Craig iteration of the character and is arguably a separate version of to the Connery and the Moore and all those other kinds of versions, it recontextualizes all the films to suggest that all this womanizing and drinking and playing spies is not everything it's cracked up to be.
Made you feel it, did he?
You've got a choice, you know. Just because you've done something doesn't mean you have to keep doing it.
And it's actually incredibly miserable, and no one would ever want to be this person.
You're serious?
Like you said, you do what I do for too long, and there won't be any soul left to salvage.
Which brings us closer to Bond as a character. This is the best time he has ever felt like a fully rounded human being.
I'm leaving with what little I have left. Is that enough for you?
And now in conjunction with No Time to Die, both movies are really satisfying as bookends. The first 00 mission and the last. One of them incredibly grounded and small stakes, and the other huge, bombastic with world-ending stakes.
If we don't do this, there will be nothing left to save.
And whilst No Time to Die is unfortunately not the greatest Daniel Craig Bond movie, I do think it trades on a lot of the same strengths as Casino Royale. Even though Craig's era is incredibly inconsistent and some of the movies are great and some of them are absolute dog shit, it will now always be remembered for the fact that we got a complete 007 story from birth to death. We got his first mission and his last, and, you know, that's never happened before. Like, when Pierce Brosnan started, he was already 007, and GoldenEye could be looked at as just any other mission. Out of context, GoldenEye could have come in any order during Pierce Brosnan's era, whereas Casino Royale and No Time to Die effectively mark the beginning and end of the story. And what with Spectre trying to tie everything in, it does really feel like, for the first time ever, we've gotten kind of a 5-part James Bond saga. My reaction to seeing James Bond die was mixed at first, because I don't know if ultimately he is a character that you do need to see die. As I was saying with Skyfall, part of the fun is that he is kind of ultimately unkillable, and he does come back, and the continuity's loose, you know, we don't care. Having said that, I really like that they took the chance to tell a story with 007 from beginning to end, from Casino Royale to No Time to Die. The fact that they had Casino Royale as the starting blocks with his first mission as 007 meant that it felt really right to get to this one and see him end and leave a legacy. I don't know if I ever need to see James Bond die again, but for the purposes of this movie, I do think it was perhaps maybe the only time he ever could have gotten away with it. This was the only time to die. And I like that it has broken the curse of the last Bond movie of a particular Bond's era being shit and given a weak ending. Craig was going to get the Die Another Day treatment. He was going to get to drive off into the sunset with the Bond girl of that movie, never to return again, and get his happily ever after. That was what Spectre's ending was supposed to be. But I'm glad that isn't the ending, and I'm glad we got this, where he got to meet his daughter, and things got to happen that we've not seen in a Bond movie before. So in conclusion, my rankings of the Daniel Craig Bond era from worst to best are 5th Spectre, 4th Quantum of Solace, 3rd Skyfall, 2nd No Time to Die, and 1st Casino Royale. And here it is flipped because it looks much better. What's your ranking of Daniel Craig's Bond adventures? What did you think of No Time to Die? And why do you think Casino Royale is clearly the GOAT? Let me know in the comments below. And just before I go, I want to thank Craig Hurst for being the latest $100 patron. Thank you very much, Craig. That's incredibly awesome, and I really appreciate it. So thanks a lot. For the rest of you guys, I will be making some changes to Patreon very shortly, which I'll probably be announcing in the next video. So yeah, stay tuned for that. A big personal thank you to our full fat tier patrons, Dr. Chike, Jax Merrick, and Cyrus Solker. Your ongoing support keeps the lights on. Until next time, keep it full fat.